Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to TMP Finance, where we make long and short-term investing simple. Let's take a look at our NASDAQ analysis for the day, and we'll also take a look at some stocks that you should be keeping in mind in the short term as well. So let's take a look at the NASDAQ over here. We were able to close up 0.88%, and that's a pretty good day, especially considering that we started off the day looking very bullish. Not only did we close outside of this rising support here, we also were able to break through in the short term a pretty significant a resistance zone as well, but we were luckily able to flip over and then turn this day into something good. And I am liking the way that this is looking for the bulls as well, just because we are at the highest price that we've been for the NASDAQ. We can see that there's obviously been some kind of resistance over here, and that we're finally able to break over that. So that is a pretty good look. You can be looking to take a pretty safe trade over here while keeping your stop loss down below either this risk level over here or right below this rising support level over here, and taking profit at 21,700, or even a little bit higher if you want to try and aim for 21,850. Those are pretty good take profit zones, and those are still going to give you a pretty decent risk to reward, especially while we're up for short-term plays, and we're also up pretty close to all-time highs as well. But for the NASDAQ, I am expecting it to reach all-time highs for this year, and new all-time highs for sure. And I'm just saying maybe in the next 2 or 3 months, we'll definitely be able to achieve that. Now for the bears, that is my bullish scenario. For the bear scenario, I don't have anything going for us aside from the fact that we are pretty overextended in some stocks, and that we do have a gap that does need to be filled. That is looking pretty big actually. This gap over here. So if we do measure it out, this is a gap of 1.7%. Now, in my research here, when it comes to looking for gap fills on QQQ, it seems that the biggest gap that we've left untouched ever since 2010 was about 0.8%. Now, this is definitely more than double that size, so I am pretty confident that in somewhere, I can't even say the short term, that somewhere along the way, we'll be able to come and fill that gap. So if you did want to look for a buying opportunity in QQQ and you think that we're too high right now, you can take a look for that price over there when we come back down in QQQ to about 494. So do keep an eye on that, or even 495 if you want to try to have somewhat of a psychological number there. Let's take a look at some other stocks over here. Let's take a look at Qualcomm. Now this is a stock that this is the first time I'm actually talking about it on the channel here. Qualcomm, I was taking a look last night at some stocks here and see what some good buying opportunities are, and this is looking pretty good here. Qualcomm, ever since its recent all-time high over here at June 2024, we've fallen a decent amount, 36%. Now if you are looking for that all-time high, again, to the upside, you can be looking for about 58% here, nearly 60%. So that is looking pretty decent for Qualcomm. And if we do zoom out, we can see that Qualcomm has been relatively strong. It's still a growth stock. You do have a little bit of chopping. It's not that smooth or where you see an exponential growth. However, I do believe that Qualcomm, again, that is in the NASDAQ, and it is, I believe, the 36th biggest stock in the NASDAQ index. So, I mean, if the investors in for the NASDAQ are saying that it's a good stock to buy for the index, that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know. I mean, their earnings are very, very solid too. Like, let's just zoom out. And ever since 2017, well, halfway through 2017, they haven't missed on earnings. They beat every single time. So I am pretty confident that Qualcomm would be a very good buy, especially if we do break this falling resistance line over here. Now, this resistance line has been very, very strong. We've had some very, very clean plays off of it. So if it were to ever break through, and it looks like this could be a very good candidate for a potential bottom in the market, just because you have this huge day, and this is probably Trump's tweet day, let's call it, where it moved up 15%. So if you do want to call this a bottom, there's a very safe trade that you can place over here, and it's very simple. Let's say that we do break out at around this level over here. Let's say that we do have a breakout. I'm not saying that it has to happen around July. It can fall even more, but let's say that you were to break out here. You can keep your stop loss right underneath that swing low and try to aim for those all-time highs up there, and that's a pretty safe 3 risk to reward. Now, if you did want to, either reduce your position size, that's up to you when it comes to your risk management. But Qualcomm, though, pretty solid stock, and I am looking the way that it's looking, especially if it does break out there. So that is what I'm looking at for Qualcomm. Let's take a look at Apple over here. Now, Apple, if I had to place a bet on one of the top 7 stocks for the most growth that we're going to see from here on out to the end of 2025, I do believe it will be Apple. Apple's super undervalued right now. It's sitting at $200. Now, while these other stocks in the Mag 7 have been able to rocket significantly, I'm talking about Meta, I'm talking about nvidia, I'm talking about Microsoft. Apple has kind of stuck behind, and this is pretty typical for Apple. If you remember last year, around halfway through 2024, Apple was sitting at 160. Now, that was a price that people were freaking out at because they thought it was a very low valuation. And again, when you have people freaking out, especially retail investors freaking out about low prices, that's a fantastic time to buy into it, especially if the stock is very strong, and Apple being the third biggest stock in the NASDAQ in the NASDAQ index. I have very high confidence in it, and so does other investors that have billions of dollars more than I do. So I'm just going to leave it at that there. Now, Apple, very, very safe trade over here. What you can be looking for, again, you can take the swing low over here. You can look for the all-time high or even a new all-time high I'd recommend. And that's still going to be about a two risk reward. If you do want to even try to be a little bit more aggressive with your play, you can keep your stop loss right below these kind of swings over here. And this is now a 5 risk reward. So I am liking the looks of Apple over here. The earnings were pretty solid as well. I think the reason why it's tapering off is just because, well, first of all, one, market manipulation, but then the second thing too, they did pay off a huge lawsuit as well for $500 million, I believe. So they are recovering from that. But as soon as people forget about that, because the market's super emotional as of lately, you will see Apple start to boom, and then you will think, oh, if only I bought earlier, you know? I know that you sit at home with your calculator and you would have seen what would happen if you were to dump all your money into the NASDAQ 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even Apple 10 years ago, and how much millions you could have made. So this is that opportunity right there, so get into it and don't be sleeping on this. As of our returns for the Discord server, we're currently up 166% year to date. Now, people in the S&P, we're past halfway through the year, which is so absurd to think about, and they have just made 1%. This is the first time that they're seeing 1% on the chart, which is absolutely ridiculous. So if you are looking for some fantastic returns and you're looking for safe trades with fantastic risk reward ratios, and those are the only trades that I take, very handpicked and well selected trades, come take a look at the link in the description, wap.com/TNP Finance. We're currently beating the S&P by 165%, and I let all my investors know in the Discord about the take profit levels, stop loss levels, risk allocation as well, and you also get notice on hot stock picks, and you get free one-on-one sessions as well. So if that is you, you're looking to better your trading journey and try to keep it very, very simple, because I do all the analysis for you, come take a look at that service, link in the description. But that will be a wrap for today. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon. Later, y'all.